It's been another busy week for the culture warriors. They never rest, do they? They have the stamina, tenacity and moralistic fervour of a kind of reincarnated cyborg version of Mary Whitehouse. And they've reached the highest echelons of power now. So, the government of British Columbia have put out a tweet encouraging pregnant people to get their booster shot. Pregnant people. Now, surely the most commonly used word is women. But, of course, that might be offensive to all those pregnant men out there, and seahorses, of course. Just to be sure, the government of British Columbia specified that applicants could self-identify as pregnant. So, apparently, we can now just imagine that we're pregnant and everyone else has to go along with it. It reminds me a bit of this article. You might remember this one. My 15-year-old transgender son is going through menopause and I'm so proud of him. This is what progress looks like. I'm just not convinced that we should be treating people's private fantasies as though they are real life. I was saying this to my imaginary wife the other day. She agreed, like she always agrees with me. That's the advantage of having imaginary wives. They're very good for the ego. Of course, this tweet from the government of British Columbia is just the latest of a never-ending onslaught against the word woman. And this week, the New York Times started using the word menstruators in its copy. Isn't menstruators exactly the kind of euphemism someone would use if they really hated women? And then, of course, you've got Planned Parenthood. This is an American provider of reproductive health care. They put out this article saying that folks with a vulva are far more than reproductive machines. Really? Then why are you calling them folks with a vulva? Why not just go the whole hog and start calling women bipedal gestation units? Maybe they meant to write folks with a Volvo, you know, which doesn't make sense either, but at least it doesn't reduce women to their bodily organs. And in other news, M&Ms have updated their chocolate characters to make them more inclusive. Now, I've always said that the struggle for equal representation among anthropomorphic chocolate treats is the last great civil rights issue of our time. I think if Martin Luther King were alive today, this would be the main focus. Most of the problems seem to be with the green M&M, apparently, who wears high heels and tends to pout coquettishly. And now she's going to be wearing trainers, which sets a much better example for young girls. You know, just think of all those kids who have eaten M&Ms over the years and have emulated the whorish behaviour of that green chocolate minx. So, on to another story now. So, a few months ago, on this very show, I reported on a campaign that social justice activists were undertaking against a chip shop. That's right, a chip shop. Believe me, there is nothing these people can't be offended about. And the reason they were offended is because when Recep Turhan opened his first chip shop in Whitechapel, he decided to name it after a local celebrity. He called it Jack the Chipper, right? Now, the social justice activists didn't seem to mind this, to be honest, but when he opened another outlet in Greenwich, then they were furious, because Greenwich is middle class, so that's their territory, you see. And as I said at the time, I don't think Turhan was attempting to glorify a Victorian serial killer. This all happened ages ago. I mean, it's not like he called it Harold Chipman, which would have been, distasteful. Anyway, so this notorious chip shop is back in the news this week after Turhan won a court case after being fired from his last job for exposing himself in order to ward off a customer who was complaining about his parking. So it turns out, according to the law, flashing is a legitimate rebuttal to customer complaints. This should make those disputes at the returns desk at Marks & Spencer quite interesting. So we've got the poet Kate Clanchy. Now, she's parted company with her publisher Picador after there were complaints about her Orwell Prize-winning memoir, Some Kids I Taught and What They Taught Me. Although it was critically acclaimed, the book was attacked by 3 activists, online just 3, who said it was problematic because of the various descriptions of ethnic minority pupils. And what did the pupils themselves think of this? Well, they defended Kate Clanchy. At least 20 of them wrote an open letter to the bookseller praising Clanchy's, quote, unequivocal care and support for us as poets and people, pushing back against the suggestion that they were in any way victims. Didn't matter. Picador ignored them, didn't defend Clanchy, and said they were going to issue an edited, let's call it censored, version of the book that wouldn't cause such grotesque offence, even though the people it was apparently offending weren't offended. Again, you see, online activists are getting offended on other people's behalf, and in this case, it took just 3 of them to get a book cancelled and a working relationship destroyed. Now, let me just show you an example of the kind of thing that these activists get upset about. So here's one of the trio who complained about hate country. This is her tweeting last year about how the concept of debate is itself oppressive. This is what she says. She says, I get regular invites to debate on various platforms. I always say no. Debate is an imperialist, capitalist, white supremacist, cis, heteropatriarchal technique that transforms a potential exchange of knowledge into a tool of exclusion and oppression. She clearly has a point. You know, if you open your ideas up to scrutiny and allow your views to be challenged, they might be exposed as shallow and incoherent. And then you might have to stop orchestrating smear campaigns against people who've done absolutely nothing wrong. You might have to stop piling on to people on Twitter whenever they express any kind of disagreement. You might have to stop trying to get people sacked and trashing people's reputations in the name of compassion and progress. And that would never do.